it's a school where everyone likes math.
We has confirmed
So
we have
used to
quorum,
have
so we're gonna go
this
ahead
little
and
thing.
call this meeting to order today, June 9th at 1:03 p.m. How are you? We're gonna go ahead and get started. Julie, if you could do the roll for us. It's over there. Give her a moment.
Jennifer Rodriguez,
Here.
Cynthia Ritchie. And you
Here. I'm here.
Thank you. Kristen Besega. Here. Elsa Batista. Here. Tiffany Colette. Here. Jennifer Delaney.
Here.
Anne Deschelle. Sarah Laura Fitzsimons.
Here.
Rebecca Good.
Here.
Jenny Graves.
Here.
Margaret Gustafson. Anne Merriman.
Here.
Patrice McCarthy.
Here.
Catherine Rowe. Bob Sartoris. And Cynthia Sonagliano.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. We're going to start off with announcements on the administrative hiring process update. So,
Good news. We do have someone starting this Friday. So, yeah. So, I'll be working on with Cynthia, SDE Cynthia. Onboarding. And then if we have a July meeting, she'll be here, but I'll make sure everyone is introduced to the new administrator, and I'll be here too, so. Yeah.
thank you for all the work that you've been doing. We look forward to the continued relationship with all of us. Before we move forward, can we get we have a moment to review the minutes from May 12th? Is there any adjustments? Being none, I think have them approved as is. Next is the legislative update. You guys have been all, but if you've all been following the legislative process, our language did not move forward, but most language in this legislative session did not move forward as it pertains to education. So we will continue the work and we will just fall back on continuing to use Public Act 2441's language as we move forward in our work. Next and prepare for the next legislative season in 2026. All right, presentation questions and answers. We have first the performance office. Pilot data for November present. Thank you so much for coming back this week. We appreciate that.
Thank you. Appreciate inviting us. Oh, you're driving the data.
Again, let me just pull it up.
Is the PDF. That's so we will speak to the Praxis bridge work. We shared an update last time, and then gave us some homework, which was excellent. And so we went back and done some homework. And we're back with not only some of the updated data, but also some follow-up from what came up in the discussion last time in May. Also, we heard about discussions that were happening in some of the ad hoc committees around standard error of measurement and using standard error of measurement and understanding. So we're actually going to spend a little bit of time on standard error of measurement as well, and why the Praxis bridge uses what it does. And if you're looking to go down the path of multiple measures, where standard error fits in or doesn't really fit in. So we'll sort of discuss that as well. So, thank you, Chloe. It's amazing. Thank you very much. So those are the two topics, and moving on. So Praxis Bridge, you all know what it is. For those, it's currently available in the elementary ed, the 4 elementary ed areas. Being expanded to other ones coming up shortly, we'll cover that. But any candidate scoring within one standard error of the measurement of the passing score on any of those 4 subtests can take this professional learning module. It's a short, brief thing. It has some presentation, some knowledge checks, and then the person, when they complete, is deemed as passed. It's been available since November 2024, and there is no cost for our candidates right now. Next slide. Okay, and that's basically the flow. If you score more than 1 SEM below, then you retake Praxis. Or if you're within 1 SEM of the passing score, then Praxis Bridge option becomes available to you. So that's the green path. Yep.
If you're more than 1 SEM below the cutoff, is it still an opportunity to retake the test for free, or is it only if it's within 1 SEM?
I believe the retake is still, we have grants and supports, right? And then I believe there is
They're
still.
entitled to 2 free retests.
Next slide. So what do the numbers say so far? So this took a little while to dig and clarify. So the pie chart is showing you the bridge completion numbers after November 1, when the program was launched. So for those who took the test after November, on or after November 1. And the first thing I'll mention to you that among those who don't pass Praxis in these areas, about 38 to 40% of those individuals, those who don't pass, are actually falling within the 1 SEM. Actually a decent chunk of individuals. And the pie chart represents all those individuals who have fallen in that bucket. And what we see is that 177 of the 272 eligible tests, because these are by tests, or 65% have already been accessed through Praxis Bridge. And 172 of the 177 tests have been completed. When they're completed, that means they have passed the test. Right? So 2/3 of the folks who have failed and are eligible for Praxis Bridge after November 1 are accessing Praxis Bridge. 1/3, about 34-35%, have not, as of this run, which was a week or so ago, had not accessed Praxis Bridge. So the green chunk represents those who accessed it and completed. The 5 tests that have accessed but have not completed yet. The blue, 95 tests not yet accessed. Okay.
It says purchase.
Purchased basically means that they went and accessed because they're.
It's not, like not at a cost.
Yeah, it's not a cost. It's just a no cost purchase.
It's not the register and like.
Yeah, that's the system terminology. It's essentially accessed, yep. There are also an additional 306 tests, because what we did, we did this whole retroactive availability for those who had taken it prior to November 1, but that didn't really launch till February. So it's not been as long. And it's a little harder if you've taken the test many months ago or even years ago and have not, thought about it or whatever. And now all of a sudden you get an email, you're like, what is this about? So we're still trying to tease out the uptake on that, but we still had 306 tests that had been accessed, and 174 of those retroactive sort of tests have actually been completed. So almost the same number, if you think about it, just from a pure number standpoint, retroactive completers versus post November 1 completers. The word's getting out. We need to do more, and that'll be in the next few slides, but people are accessing it. And once you access it, especially for those who are, when they get the intimation immediately after they test, the completion is there. So, and I've already shared with you the positive feedback, the narrative feedback, from qualitative feedback.
Can you just remind us all how the percentage of test takers that they pass and they don't need additional services?
So again, it's high, like I don't have that number right here, but you know, we've presented that in the past in our dashboard, right? We presented in our dashboard where
I believe it's in
It's
another.
okay.
I can't-
And it's a different, so first time
So-
test takers, they pass.
the first time test takers
I'm
is
sorry, actually I'd wanted the first, like, you've taken the test, that's your first time and you passed.
so first time test takers, the pass rate will vary based on the test. And you should also know that people take the test for the first time even well in advance of them even entering their final year of their EPP. So people are taking these tests like before they even enter their final year.
That person though would be eligible if they came with one SEM.
Absolutely.
Opportunity. Yeah, that's why I think the first time test taker pass rate is somewhere in the 40 to 50% range.
No, it's
I
high,
think
it's higher than that. It's higher than that. It's,
Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, it's on page 5 of the packet that starts with Connecticut State
Yeah.
Board of Education.
Say what the percentage.
yeah, that was the,
72.7% first attempt, and then 93.2 second
and
attempt.
that was pre-pandemic. The rates were lower after the pandemic. The rates are a little bit lower after the pandemic, but they're still decent. And again, when you get towards the end of your program and you know, because people are sometimes, it seems to us that just taking it just to test it out. So,
Even add some programs, some graduate programs or alternate route programs have it as an admission requirement. So they would be taking it before they've even applied to a grad program necessarily.
Yeah.
So
But just to understand the 40% that's still a smaller number. If 70% of people who take it the first time, like pass it, that's great. And then there's this others percentage. So if this is helpful.
What was the total number of individuals that were retroactive?
yeah, the retroactive number, we didn't put it because we didn't feel like we had a clear handle on it because in that retroactive denominator, there were people who had subsequently taken the full test and passed, and that was not gleaned out, so I don't want to give you a number now. That uptake percentage, I would suspect, is not like the 65% that you see here. I think that uptake percentage will be lower because more time has passed, but I don't have we looked at a number, but then we were like not sure if like that it had been properly pieced out, so let me get back on that.
Said they've 306 started and 174. How much time does it, like, how long do they have to complete?
How long do they have to complete it? I think
it's open for 6 months, right?
at least 6 months,
Once they've accessed it, then they have about 6 months to.
but they have X time to even access it, right? There's a longer window to even access it. And again, the module literally is like,
45 minutes.
yeah, it's not that long. The asynchronous, targeted. Helpful?
Very, thank you.
Okay, good. More.
Do you have a question?
Kind of going off your question, is the 6 months to complete from when they start the practice? Right? Okay, or is it?
That one
When they've taken.
When they enroll. Like
When
once
they
they.
enroll, okay.
when they start the praxis, not, I don't believe it's when they take the praxis test.
To access the,
The 102 who accessed it but haven't completed something less than 6 months
Depending on when they,
started it.
yeah.
And are there nudges that?
So let me actually, so the next few slides, I'm gonna turn it over to Lauren and Malik here to walk us through what are the ways in which we are nudging folks, and this is really homework from last time, about participation and completion of practice bridge. So I'll turn it over to.
I'll start off by saying whatever additional suggestions that the board has for us around communicating with Connecticut candidates, we can certainly take that into account. Currently, I'll just share our awareness efforts. In terms of resources, as you can see on screen here, we have email communications as well as informational flyers that are shared with the department, shared shared here with the board and then also with prep programs around the state. We have websites that focus specifically on prep programs as well as test takers or teacher candidates. And that can be accessed through our Praxis website. And we also have a question flyer that touches on the top questions that a candidate may have as they're pursuing Praxis Bridge. We do post things monthly to LinkedIn in terms of a social media perspective. We also have blogs that are available. Yes.
The email communication, is that an email like from the portal to the individual that says like you have 100 more days until this expires? Or is it just an overarching explanation about the bridge program?
Very good question. On the next slide here, we'll just dive in a little bit on our email communication. So a candidate takes a Praxis exam, they fall within that threshold, and they are eligible for Praxis Bridge. They'll receive notification. So what we have split out here is what is currently taking place through Praxis, and then what we are putting in place over these next few months, partly based on some of the suggestions that we've received here from the board over the last couple of months. So just looking at the current state here, test takers receive an awareness email 5 days before they test, letting them know Praxis Bridge is available. So currently it's only offered in Connecticut using elementary education, but in the future, there are several tests that will be Praxis Bridge enabled. So candidates that sign up for that exam will be notified that Praxis Bridge is available for that test should they meet the requirements. Beyond that, eligible candidates receive an email as well. That notification comes as they receive their score reports. Usually it depends on the test, so it varies, but some score reports are released in 10 days, some are 12, some are 15, just depending on the test and the construct of the test. But once they receive a score report, they also receive an email that says you are eligible for Praxis Bridge for this exam. They will also have a link to the retake information that's already been set up here in Connecticut for the last several years. They'll also receive monthly reminders to take advantage of Bridge, and they'll receive that continuously until they actually register for taking the module for their particular exam. In the future, so in the next coming months here, we're also going to send eligible test takers 2 additional emails to encourage. So they get an email, we're going to send them another one saying, hey, this is an option for you. Try to take advantage of it if you can. Bridge participants will also receive 2 emails encouraging them to complete. So right now we have that current email saying that it's offered, another email saying you're eligible, adding in 2 additional emails saying take advantage, and then 2 additional emails saying, okay, we see that you've registered. Now let's go through and process through this professional development tool. And then after we already have an email that comes out to say, congratulations, you completed this. So, you know, this is one step along your journey to becoming a teacher, but we'll also follow up with that completer message as well. Yes, ma'am.
Just wanted to, back to the cost part, the emails talk about purchasing and cost. Is there a individualized Connecticut? Yeah, there's no cost.
Well, the candidate knows that there isn't a cost once they go through the registration process. So once they complete that, there isn't a cost to them. So it's clear through the material that we offer. But
They don't know in the email, so they'd have to
Yeah.
click through. Right?
Yeah, we hear you. I think that needs to be, like, the message that goes to them should clearly say there's no cost. So if that's not happening, then
I think that's a nice place to catch people to say, don't worry, you're not fishing out.
cost.
Purchase. Right.
any other questions before we move on to one additional topic?
I was just, oh,
No, go ahead. No, I was just gonna add that we have a one-stop shop that we utilize for marketing and getting information out, which is teach.org. It's who we work with, and so I'm gonna make sure if it's not already, I believe they're also as people call there, because people call for anything, whether they're in a program or not, that they're also messaging us out as well. I just wanted to see.
I know the bridge right now is only offered for, I think, what, 305. But the 2 free retests, is that for any certification? Great, thank you.
Any questions before?
I think another one of the suggestions from the board and the department here was to host a webinar for prep programs so that they could become more aware of how to research their Praxis Bridge eligible candidates. So we set up a webinar that's going to take place on the 23rd of June. It will be recorded. It's going to last about an hour in length, and we're going to kind of step through, just give them a quick 5 minutes on Praxis Bridge for anyone who's unaware, another 5 minutes on, or 10 minutes on ETS Data Manager that provides them just a quick overview of the system, just in case they may be new to the prep program. And then we'll take the rest of the time to dive into Praxis Bridge, looking at our test taker section and how best to look up individual candidates that have taken the elementary education exam to narrow down who may be Praxis Bridge eligible. So that's open. The link is already out there. We have 33 registrants so far across prep programs. So again, registration link is available for anyone else that wants to participate. And as I mentioned, this will be recorded, so we'll be able to share that link. And then we'll be able to host additional webinars, maybe the summertime. I know this is, June and folks are on vacation. Might not be the best time, but we wanted to do something in response to the question that we received here. So we're going to follow up and do some more in the fall. Folks might be more generous. Yes.
Who's being notified of that opportunity?
Right now to the deans and the certification officers of all the ed programs, because they be the people that have access to the data manager.
I wonder if like the Connecticut teacher residency program should be notified.
So they are an ed provider administered through CREC, so they would have been notified. And it'll be useful for them because there's all kinds of data that's available that they can use actually for program improvement, because they could drill down and look at what are the modules that their candidates are having to register for. And then they could sort of use that as an opportunity to see if it's if they want to fill in some gaps programmatically.
Sounds great. Anyone else have any questions about that?
It's a little delayed. I swear I'm.
I've been watching you go.
So in terms of additional titles, I know that's a question from the board as well. Special education foundational knowledge is going to be coming out this summer. And then as you can see, the fall titles here, secondary math, secondary social studies, a host of middle school tests, as well as pair pathways, which is the new paraprofessional exam that's going to be released. There'll be some that will be released in spring 26, and then we will just continue this cycle. It does take our AD team at ETS a certain amount of time to produce these modules. So as we move from season to season, more will be coming out, and our goal is to cover as many high volume exams that Connecticut uses so that we can reach the most people. So this will look very different by the middle of 26 or the end of 26. We'll have a whole host of additional titles.
So let's now pivot to standard error of measurement. Getting a little technical here, but I think it's important to understand why we choose or chose the 1 SEM threshold. And as you're having discussions about multiple measures, what does this mean and what can you use it for and what you can't use it for? I want to invite, I'm joined on this part of the presentation by the Director of Psychometrics at ETS, Dr. Bihua Shang. He is there. Bihua, if you don't mind waving so people can, there you go. That's Bihua. He has agreed to join remotely to, we've been discussing this topic at length for some time, so I really appreciate Dr. Shane's joining us so that we can discuss this with you here. So to understand standard error, we have to do a little bit of overview of the test itself and the test development process. And where do we get the evidence to support our argument that passing the praxis is a good threshold for content area knowledge? So we have to start with again, we're not going to spend too much time, but just a little bit. Here we're showing you the praxis test development process. And all standardized tests go through similar sort of lengthy process around content standards to which they're developed. And then the content is reviewed. The test specifications are built from those recommendations from the advisory committee. Items are developed, a blueprint is developed, and items are developed. And then there is, those items are field tested, the test form is field tested, et cetera, repeated rounds. And then there is a cut score that is established that designates what needs to be the passing standard. So it goes through a whole host of steps and processes. But the key point to remember is that the advisory committees that are informing this process are really comprised of about 12 to 15 participants in each of these advisory committees, 60% of whom are practicing teachers in that subject area. Because if you're dealing with a physics test or a biology test, it's who are the people who are the experts in that area, but also teacher educators and state representatives. So it's sort of a practitioner developed, but with ETS and psychometric development people who are guiding the whole process. And that's really important to note because that's partly where the validity argument comes from. Like, how do we know that what we're assessing are the right things to assess? How do we know that the items are actually, asking the right questions? And then when we get to the cut score, how do we know that that is where we want to draw the line? And where it says JQC, and I'll discuss that in the next slide, actually, if we can move to that, JQC represents the just qualified candidate. And so the cut score, where the passing standard is established for praxis tests that we're looking at, are set at what's called the just qualified level. And the level is sort of a level that differentiates the just qualified from the not qualified. And these are done through sort of psychometric processes called standard setting activities. Here again, you bring a group of practitioners and experts who are presented with items and they look at those items and then they say, where on that sequence of items do we want to say, like, you know what, these are this is where I think at a minimum, the just qualified candidate for a teacher certificate should know in this subject area. So again, I'm oversimplifying the process greatly. BY is probably cringing over there saying, gee, there's not covering all these different topics, but I'm just trying to give you like a very high level. And if we go to the next slide, and so what I want to show you here is that, this is the minimum passing score for the 4 elementary subtests. And these are represented in scale scores. And we don't talk raw scores. Raw scores is like the number of items somebody got correct. We don't talk in those terms because we want to make sure that the test forms that are used are comparable. So those are sort of equated, converted to scale scores, and that becomes the comparable measure. So when you look at the passing standards for reading language arts, right, it's a passing score of 157, and that roughly amounts to about 42 out of 65 points on the test. So it's not getting everything right. It's really getting about 42 points on the test. So if you look at math, it's 157, and that's about 26 out of 40. In science, 159, about 33 out of 50. In social studies, 155, about 33 out of 55. And if you do those percentages, what is the raw score percentage, you'll come out to somewhere in the mid 60s. So, again, it's not expecting a person when they pass the test to get everything correct or even get most of it correct. It's a majority, right? And again, it goes back to, at that point, are the experts comfortable saying that is where the just qualified candidate needs to fall, right? So again, these are not aspirational levels or advanced levels of performance. These are, again, the just qualified candidate level.
Would you be able to speak to the the expert group. You got teachers, state reps, and what was the other?
Teachers, educators.
Educators
And-
and state reps, the racial, linguistic, and ethnic diversity of that group as well. Do those demographics?
Yeah, those are, again, I don't have them. They'll vary by each test. And Why do you want to speak to that?
Of course, roughly. So the candidates or the judges for the standard setting actually have been through a vetting process that has to represent different stakeholders groups. So ethnicity, geographic location, and all those are part of the consideration. Jit, we have the standard setting report if there is a specific committee that this committee is interested in, saying we can actually share that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we have reports. We'd be happy to share that. And these processes are not unique to Praxis tests. Most any standardized test goes through this. So for example, with our SAT or Smarter Balance or any of these tests that we use, you have to use people and the practitioners are heavily involved in making these types of cuts. But the most important thing I want you to know here is that it's not majority correct or advanced levels of performance. We're looking at the just qualified candidate. So then when we're talking about standard error of measurement, the question really is, how confident, and this was Bihua's question in one of our exchanges, and I thought this is a perfect question, is how confident are we, or how confident do we want to be with that passing score in determining that that passing score is the score we want it to be at, and how, that we can tolerate the level of certainty we have of those passing and the level of certainty we have of those not being able. What confidence do we want to have with this? Next slide. So here we get into test reliability. We talked a little bit about validity. Reliability, some people argue is part of validity itself, is like, if you were to take the test again over and over, how likely are you to get about the same score? That's really is a measure reliable, right? If you were to step on your weighing scale, as many of us do in the morning, if you step on it in the morning, if you get off, you step back on it again, is it going to give you roughly the same score? It's the same measure, most likely, but there might be some instrumentation issues that give you slight differences, right? So, in that way, here you're trying to measure, something that is not physical observable. It's a hidden knowledge kind of thing, right? So any test you build, there is some level of error in the test. So there are ways in psychometrics to quantify that error, and that's what gets reported as the standard error of measurement. And standard error of measurement is directly related to the reliability of the measure, and greater the reliability, lower the standard error. And that's really how it works out. Can you go to the next slide, please? So we use that test score for a person and the standard error that we have to create what's called a confidence interval for that person's score. And a confidence interval, if you're familiar with like polls that come out, right? They say, 47% plus or minus X, right? It's X percentage. So a confidence interval is sort of like that, sort of saying at this score for a person, what is the range that we would expect the person to score again at if they were to take the test again? Next slide. So now let's look at these confidence intervals for the different thresholds. So the bottom horizontal line is the Praxis scale, and this I believe is for the ELA test, the elementary English language arts. And the vertical bold red line is the passing standard. Okay. And notice that the distribution, and this distribution is those who took the test, is sort of peaking at that -1 SEM line. That's where so this represents the scores of candidates who scored 1 SEM below that passing standard. And what you see, that green shaded area to the right of the passing score, represents the likelihood that candidates who take it, who score at this 1 SEM below, what is the likelihood that they'll pass the test? So that green shaded area represents that passing. And that basically means that if those scoring within 1 SEM below the passing standard, if they were to take the test again, they have about a 16% chance of passing the test. So 84% chance they're not gonna pass, because they're to the left of that line. 16% probability that they might pass. So then the question for us is, are we comfortable with that 16% kind of, you know, saying that somebody failed when they have a 16% chance of potentially passing? So we said, you know what? Maybe we should allow this praxis bridge opportunity. So that's why for those one SEM below, we say, you know what, there's still a 16% chance of passing the test. Let's see if we can give a bridge opportunity to help them. They're still close to the passing standard. Let's provide that bridge opportunity. And meanwhile, if you want to add anything, you know, you should please feel free to, I'm looking at you, so if you feel, you know, if you unmute or something, I'll be looking at you if you want to
Well,
jump
you
in.
covered,
and add
you
anything.
covered everything. I will jump in if there is anything I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. So this is the one SEM below, right? So now let's go to the next one. So this will be the exact same thing, but now the distribution is one, a little bit more to the left, right? So now this is two SEM below. So at two SEM below, we are 97.5% confident that individuals scoring two SEM below, the likelihood of they're not gonna pass. That there is a 2.5% chance that they're gonna pass that test at that cut score that we've established. So we're much, much more confident. So highly unlikely that they're gonna pass the test. So here's where we're saying, you know what, this is too far away from the passing score. If we allow these individuals to come into the profession, we're likely to potentially admit individuals who may not have the content background. And then if you go to three SEM below, the next slide, you'll see that percentage. Now we're 99.85% confident that they're not gonna pass the test. They're not gonna meet this test, you know, 0.15% chance of passing. So I hope this gives you a sense of why we picked the one SEM versus going into two or three SEMs. And Chloe, if you could just go to the next slide.
Question, just to make sure that I'm understanding. So when you're saying that 99.85%, that they're not going to pass the bridge if they were given the bridge opportunity?
No, the test.
They're the praxis again.
That's correct. So see, the bridge is not a test, right? It's a targeted remediation with a knowledge check. And we're doing that because those individuals are close to passing. And they have a reasonable likelihood of passing. It's still low, but it's a level that we're not comfortable with, where we're saying, like, you know what, if there's a 16% chance of passing, we want to give them a chance. But if you only have a 2.5% chance of passing, you're too far away from the passing score for us to open up the bridge.
Just want to make sure that we're clarifying that when we say the test that we mean, or the
We
assessment.
mean the actual
Praxis.
the praxis. That's correct.
Pearson or whichever one.
In this case, we're only talking the practice. That's right. So I know we've heard conversations about multiple measures from the board, and multiple measures can be other things. And one of the things we've seen in other states has to deal with potentially using GPA in content courses. So, you know, so if you're looking at an English course, if you're looking at a physics endorsement or whatever, like, you know, you're looking at like GPA in those relevant physics courses as part of the MPP program, or biology courses, or whatever the case may be, right? So whatever that content courses is. The moment you're going down any of those types of paths, what we're saying is that the praxis standard error of measure, anything below one SEM, doesn't really bolster your argument for allowing individuals into those types of pathways. The one SEM, we're giving them the praxis bridge. That's that's there. It's providing them the opportunity. If you go anything below one SEM, then that score essentially is saying that they have a very low likelihood of meeting the praxis standard. So if you're considering some other measure, and I'm not saying I'm not weighing in on what that measure is. I'm just saying that whatever that measure is, that measure will need its own validity, evidence, and argument to show that you have the evidence base to demonstrate that that alternate measure is also a valid measure that demonstrates content area, whatever that may be. And I threw out GPA and content courses as one example. if you go below one SEM, as you can see, the likelihood of passing praxis is really low. So that really doesn't serve as an argument of allowing somebody for a content area, as a proxy for a content area, anything at that point. So you're really looking at something else at this point.
Can you clarify, I know you're saying, I'm not putting a judgment on it, but there is, you're saying anything else we decide, including if we did a GPA, that because it does not go through the validity and reliability checks that a standardized test would, that it would not be a viable option?
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, great. So clarify.
Let me clarify.
I'm like,
What I'm saying is that the praxis or any, a test like this, right, has established its own foundations of validity
Yep.
and reliability for not just the content of the test, but also the cut scores,
Correct.
right? So one SEM below that cut score, we can say something about the likelihood of the passing of that at that cut score.
Yeah.
Anything beyond that, we're saying that the likelihood of passing that cut score is very low. So all we're saying is that scores below one SEM cannot serve as an evidence base to select an alternate measure or to recommend individuals for alternate measures. So if you're thinking about alternate measures, I think you just have to build a different validity evidence base. So for example, one of the validity evidence base you might build is, like I threw out the example of physics or biology, right? You might look at data, you might look at candidates who have, who are scoring, let's say, C or better in those courses, or B minus or whatever. I don't know, whatever we want to tolerate, because those are the judgment decisions that will need to be made. And then you will basically say a GPA of 3 or better on content courses is something we want to establish as a alternate measure for content area demonstration. It has no relation
Right.
to praxis, right? All I'm saying is that you'll need your own separate evidence base for making that claim. All I'm saying is that a score below -1 SEM is not part of that evidence. You're not using the praxis score to justify recommending a candidate below 1 SEM, to recommending a candidate or providing, if they don't pass praxis for whatever reason they've tried, you're considering alternate measures, and you're
Right.
building the evidence base for alternate measures. That's it. Because there were discussions in some of the ad hoc committees about using a -2 SEM or a -3 SEM. And I'm saying, like,
You're like that, no, those separate.
they're separate.
You're like,
things,
it's a
okay?
very separate thing.
Yeah, because what you're seeing is that at -2 and -3 SEM, the likelihood of passing is like really low.
Right, it should
So
be.
it doesn't make sense to really include that in the argument. You're really considering other factors at this point and other
Right.
evidence bases.
Because a candidate who is at, say, 2 SEMs, they are not able to demonstrate their
On a praxis.
knowledge on this form of testing.
That's right.
We need that, yep, okay, got it. Thank you.
So
That's
don't use that as an evidence base to say candidates scoring below 1 to, 2 SEMs below will avail of this. That doesn't
Yeah.
really follow.
Yep, okay.
So essentially, to summarize, Praxis Bridge is working for this elementary ed group. I've already talked about 38 to 40% of all failing tests after November are in that, actually even before November, that's kind of in that bucket. And 2/3 of all eligible tests have taken, and almost all of them have completed it. There are candidates retroactively that are taking and passing Praxis Bridge. Feedback's overwhelmingly positive. Malik and team are doing a lot of things to improve communication. You're going to fix that email too, I think, which is great. Thank you. Bree will be right there for Connecticut. Content folks are involved in Praxis test development. That's who builds the test. She's clicking, it's not moving. There we go. The cut score represents the just qualified candidate, roughly mid-60s in terms of raw score points. We're not expecting aspirational levels of performance or advanced content knowledge. The one SEM score is a good threshold. They're close to passing. And so we've opened them Praxis Bridge. Anything below one SEM, really the probability is just too low to open up alternatives, and don't use that as evidence base for multiple measures. See. No, that's all right. Yeah, again, yeah, basically anything below one SEM, don't use that as evidence base to allow for alternate approaches. Any alternate approaches will really need its own robust evidence base. Hope that helps.
Thank you. Does anyone have any additional questions? Go ahead, Jenny.
Just a quick one. This all looks really positive. I'm glad that people are starting to access it. I know not a praxis, but a big barrier for people is the foundations of reading assessment. Is there going to be some sort of bridge or some kind of flexibility with that assessment?
Homework item number. I'm writing, no, I'm serious. I mean, you know me, you tell me something, I'm gonna go look into it, follow it up,
The
so.
foundations of reading assessment is about 4 hours long. And for people who are not great test takers or have some kind of neurodivergence, ADHD, it's incredibly difficult assessment to persevere through. It is what I am hearing from early career educators, bigger of a barrier than the praxis.
I would need a Pearson representative.
It's all right, but the psychometrics are very similar.
Yes.
It would
But their test construction could be different. I mean, there'll be nuances, but the underlying theory that we're looking at is similar psychometric theory, so.
And I think how this came about is part of those conversations, so I think it's more, we started having these conversations with Pearson. They do the Massachusetts tests, and they were in the process of developing, they called it like Flex Path or some other thing. I don't know where they are in that, but they probably speak for them, but I would imagine they might be.
I know for people who would like to get cross-endorsed, who haven't gotten a certification in a really long time, that is now a requirement for people. And I know some people are not going ahead and getting cross-endorsed in special education or other bilingual ed, different cross-endorsements, because that requirement does stop people.
Well, foundations of reading is only required, it's not required for all certification areas, it's elementary and special education.
Right, but the special education, you know, it is a newer assessment. I think it started, what, 2009, 2008?
Quite good.
I think it was like 2000.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds right.
You know,
2009 sounds right.
if there's data that supports that being, you know, needed certification for early career educators, you know, that information would be welcome.
So what question are we hearing here then? So that is genius, exactly.
I think the question is that, I mean, I'm gonna dig into just pass rates first.
Yeah.
Understand, like, I mean, I know we report it, but we need to dig more into it to see.
Simply the fail rate.
Yeah.
Whatever the bridges are the word.
Whatever potential bridge could be created for that, and some kind, is it needed? If it is, if the fail rate is so large and there isn't a bridge, is it a necessary cert or test?
I don't know when you're meeting next, maybe the fourth time on this one, but,
Okay,
I'm thinking like August.
okay.
Would that be workable, or were you thinking September?
Yeah, I was thinking September, but let's dig in, we'll find out. And
appreciate it. Thank you.
clearly, we're blazing a trail or with, you know, and I think ETS has been a good partner in this and pushing for this. So as, I think as we do more here, we absolutely gotta ask our other vendor to respond, no question. And before we sign off, Biwa, did you want to say anything in closing from your side? I mean,
No, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for speaking on behalf of us, Ajit. You did really well.
that's high praise from the director. Okay, I'll take it, Biwa, thank you.
So thank you so much for bringing us the updated data. We have a clear understanding of since it's been implemented in November to now what the data looks like, and the data looks really good.
Very clear.
So we're looking forward to seeing the additional modules and kind of getting those updates. Also, thank you so much for hearing our feedback and implementing it so quickly. We really, I mean, I think that's meaningful to this group and ensuring that our candidates have every opportunity to come into Thank you so much.
And we'll keep the bridge update on future presentations as well, because I think it's important so you know how it's going.
Yeah, once our new admin start, we kind of like schedule out like when we think, and then she can reach out to your office and figure out exactly. Right?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you so much.
you.
I would cater a motion to include the data on the pilot since November as part of our July 1st report to the state. So moved. Is there any discussion on that? Right. Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Everyone, Catherine. Right. And then you get to report everyone. Yeah, right. Those not in favor? We can now. Not in favor. And then any abstentions? Right, motion carries. So we'll add that as part of our July 1st report. Thank you. Next, we have the Cape MOU discussion with Lauren and Cynthia, and I don't think the Cape representative could come for this one. Are we deferring this one? Was that what it was?
Yeah, I would just like to, I would need some clarification or specific questions that we want to ask them so they can, when they can come prepared, very similar to what Ajit did. I think that would be helpful. For me, I just need a little more understanding in regards to the agreement. The way that I understand it is that the State Board of Ed has an agreement with CAPE, and that the CERT board, we have to come up with standards. And the agreement is really general, so I just need a little bit more of an understanding as to what we were looking for.
I think what we were thinking in the past meetings were that this is an opportunity for us to be finding Connecticut specific things that we might want to include in that agreement. So it was really getting a general understanding of what that might look like, and if any other states have had like specific state or state specific things added to the agreement. Our understanding is that it's going to be signed in August, but it's available to be reopened after the fact to add things.
So the way that our contracts work is that 3 months for the contracts end, we start the contract process. And yes, after contracts are agreed upon, they can be amended. I think that's what you're asking.
Yes.
But most of our contracts are pretty, only thing that really changes is just what CAPE is gonna do and what the state board. Everything else is pretty general. That comes from the AP's office. So what we do is we also leave it pretty broad, so the back and forth can, you can fit things in, you're not always amending a contract, because that can take months. So I think what may be helpful is coming up with specific questions, specific to Connecticut. Because we also have to take into account that whatever the certification board has to propose as standard, it also has to go in front of the board. And so I think we need to figure those things out first. And so we do want to leave this pretty general.
And so we have two things here. We have the current one, correct? And then we have the draft one that might get signed. Is that correct? There's two here, and it looks like it's.
Yes, one was the previous one that goes till November. And then this is just the draft, that's sort of predicated on the previous one, just with CAPE's updated language. But I think what's important just to clarify is the CAPE standards are the CAPE standards. So if at a future time, in a future year, once the CERT board has determined what the new regulations are going to be governing, ed prep in the state and all those kinds of things, some states have what's called an addendum. But there's no modification to the standards themselves. So the CAPE standards, it's a nationally, it's a CHIA recognized accreditation body. So individual states don't create new standards for CAPE. Once states have state specific standards, that if they want additional measures to the CAPE standards, that they want reported out when an EPP goes through the process. That's something called an addendum that can get added into the process. But to be fair, you all are not ready for that because you haven't come up with any of the parts, to know what you'd be looking for. But it would be outcome data based on whatever you're sort of setting up and deciding. And I think another piece that's like worth clarifying is for section 4 or whatever it is, section 12 or that I'm referring to. That language of
Is that the contract? Is that what?
no, that's like the legislation, then was like the little piece on the agenda where it said section 12A4. When that says the implementation of the standards for educator preparation programs developed by the Council for Educator Preparation. Part of the body of regulations that have been sunset come July 1, 2026 are all of the procedures relative to educator preparation program approval. And I know you have CPRL on here. All of the language in those old regulations that have been sunset refer to NCAPE, which is CAPE's predecessor. NCAPE was the previous accrediting body before CAPE came into existence. I think that language means like when you're updating those procedures, the word CAPE instead of the word NCAPE. So I think there's a couple of things that are kind of like being muddled together that might be worth thinking out.
Anne has had her hand up and she was very much like,
I'm sorry, I thought
we asked her, she was part of the conversation around it.
And I'm not sure if your hand is up because of the vote earlier, because it looked like.
No, I apologize. I put it up on the vote and now I can't get it down. I'm still working on it here. I have a new computer. But thank you for noticing. That's very kind of you.
We know
I will put on my camera and wave a lot if I really want to talk. How's that? Sorry.
Yeah, that helps her.
So I think maybe it would be ideal if we pause on the kind of CAPE conversation to come up, like you're saying, with what are the clear outliers or questions that we're wondering to ask the CAPE folks.
So how about for the next meeting that would allow I can put together so we give people time to kind of go over the draft and a thought survey together and everybody can kind of type in what their questions are into there and then I can forward that to you and you can forward it to them. Okay, so I'm gonna make a note for myself here.
And I think it might be helpful if, in addition to CAPE, we get an overview of the overall process as it could. Like, I know it, but I think just knowing what the new program approval process currently is and the continuing program approval process, inclusive of the CAPE and the decisions relative to CAPE that I think, like the only evaluation team versus. But like, I think just knowing the full process would be helpful because maybe there's things in the process itself at the state level we want to put it as a.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense because again, not all, but the majority of all of the procedures that are currently in place, those are part of that regulatory sunset of July 1.
We need like a new thing.
Correct. You either need to update the I'll defer to you all in terms of the process for how you're handling all of the regulations that are being sunset, but I think it's just important to note, like, we're using the word regulation as though it's like one body of thing, but it's also it's a lot of the procedures relative to having educator preparation in the state of Connecticut that are part of the sunset. So you'll need to like really familiarize yourself with what is currently in those regulations, what you want to keep and or change and or create. But otherwise, July 2, 2026, it'll be a choice.
The other thing I was gonna add, what I was thinking about is that now that we have another entity, what is our space or our place in agreements that are agreement of one entity with, let's say, CAPE, and then now there's another entity that came into play. How does that all fit in? And I think it'll be beneficial that the new person starting has the legal background to maybe help in guiding, especially with like contracts. Does that mean that other contract, does this one stand, does it not? Like, I think there are still a lot of legal questions as well that we may. So that's what I was trying to wrap my head around, just to be honest with all of you, which is why I needed a little bit more clarity. So maybe something else we may want to consider.
Right, we certainly have a plan moving forward for that.
So just for my understanding, the goal is you'll send something out where we all add our questions.
Correct.
And then once you get that, you'll share with me and set up the next meeting. Or I can be other questions. Yeah.
Excellent. FTE 22, steps and protocol for alignment of the revised work. The code came out of the April or May meeting where we had asked for kind of like the write-up that we could include with our report to the state to cover well in A2 of our statutory obligation. Did we get that?
Sorry, in the materials. Is it not included?
Something that way. The burns of 38 superintendent.
Oh, is that the?
The alignment, like of the degree, the endorsement code, that,
Yeah, they said that they already have a process, and we just wanted to like
see the list, right?
well, no, we could go to the list online. It was more of like, they, as you said, they have a protocol, and we just asked for like, what is that protocol, so that we can include with our report, bill.
Yeah.
12A2. I'll move on to the next part.
Yeah.
That's. All right, updates from ad hocs. Kristen just stepped out for a moment. So 12A3 public act standards and proposed regulation. This would be CPRL and ECE to propose the, I think it's our introduction document there. Yes. Thank you, Paige, and thank you, our friends from CPRL, for attending. So, who would like to go ahead and present it as is? I think it was a couple of things to it. Paige or one of the representatives from CPRL.
Sure, I can do the, are you all seeing the May 12th document?
We have it here in front of us.
Great. If there's someone from CPRO who wants to walk you through it, that's okay?
Hi, sorry,
The
just
early childhood document?
The early childhood one, yes.
hi, sorry, just
First to third grade.
yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, just to say, I think Scheherazade from our team has mic issues. I think she emailed, and also camera issues, so she doesn't have the rights to unmute, I think. So is there something that can be done to fix that? Because I think she might want to weigh in on this. We've
Yeah,
emailed
we're
about
trying
it.
to work on that right now.
Okay.
You want us to move forward to a different one and come going back and see if it's working at that point?
I think Paige can, I mean, if you're happy to, I think Paige, you can kind of kick us off, and I think we.
Either way, I'm comfortable, whatever is the preference of the board.
Okay, Paige, if you want to go ahead, then we'll start there, and if we can get Scheherazade up and running, then join in at that point.
Sure. So the first paragraph you're looking at is the change to what I think we've been calling the sort of bucket or the parameters, as all of the bands have gotten bigger. This would reflect the early childhood workforce in all stages and settings. And the really notable difference is, while it continues to be integrated, it would go birth through grade 3. The brackets mean it's removing, so it's changing nursery school to early education and preschool, as well as the kindergarten, and then through grade 3. So that's the conceptual change, and what it does is bring together the 112 and the 113, the current birth to kindergarten, or it's actually called birth to nursery, and nursery to grade 3 licensures. What I did with the board before was just go through sections. Are there any questions? It seems like that's helpful.
Kristen has a question.
Yes, with the new certification, it says that it would be for teaching in integrated general and special education classrooms. With the certification, would you be able to teach in a regular education classroom as well?
Yes, so the way the early childhood license works now is they're general ed and integrated. And we've seen elementary and special ed both come down into the early childhood developmental range. And so the 113 now, it is general education as well, as it is the 112 in pre-KK.
Nobody's online. Okay, go ahead. Was it Jenny or Patrice first?
Sort of following up, because I think I had the same perhaps confusion as a reader of this. I don't know if this is the right way to phrase it or not, but just so we are very clear that someone would not have to just be teaching in a combined general ed, special ed classroom, but the endorsement was applied to a general ed classroom.
Correct. And I think when we go to the next section where it says the teacher won't strictly be the, so we left in the language to protect ancient practices where a preschool teacher was asked to be everything, including a gym teacher and all of, physical education, art, all of it. And so this next section provides, I think, that clarity, or that's the clarity that we hoped when we all worked together on this. The underline is the added. And that's where you see general and special education classrooms. So that defines the integrated. Again, I welcome lawyers' input here, but that's how we have been proceeding. Yeah.
I'm a lawyer who's not going to opine on this language. Not my.
Jenny, go ahead.
Hi, yes. So I have the 113 certification and I am a self-contained preschool special education teacher. I know it says integrated here. With the new endorsement, will that include self-contained special education for pre-K and kindergarten? Or is this expanding special education as well as general education from birth to 3rd grade?
I want to answer this question confidently, so I'm going to defer. Is Lauren still there? Sorry not to put you on the spot, or was that Julia Frost? Just because the answer is it is as it is now, but I want your question to be answered more specifically than I have the confidence to. That looks like maybe Julia Frost.
So the current, the current 112, 113 allows you to work with all students in pre-KK, special ed, regular ed, or integrated, and regular ed students only in grades 1 to 3. Correct. The new expectation in 113 is that they can teach regular ed, special ed, or integrated for 3.
Oh, great. Are there any other questions? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. So that change is coming for it. So is this going to be for retroactive to people who already have the 112 or the 113? Or is this for people who are just getting certified in this for the first
I
time?
think there's another part that it will address it.
Okay,
Right?
great.
Yeah. So as we move
Yes.
through, I think you'll get your answer to that.
Yes. Yeah, and I just, we've been working with Lauren and Kaylin and Margaret and folks at OEC as well. So I just wanted the official people to give that answer. Yes, if you go to the next part, it's basically would give the window for teacher preparation to make the shift to 2000 by 2008. It would be, so it's effective 2026, I believe it said at the beginning, and then it would give us till 2028 to make programmatic changes, alignments, and those things. Everything else after this document in the brackets is being removed because this is the way that you all seem to be working, which makes sense to create these documents of clarity, and then there will be guidelines, which are not negotiable, but in the guidelines created by SDE. And in that is the guidance for some of those particulars you're asking. So in terms of start, we talked about grandmothering, grandfathering in. There's conversation about what keeping the additional requirements for specific developmental knowledge, early childhood knowledge. And again, this is guided not only by NACI, but also by the Division of Early Childhood, which is the division in the Council for Exceptional Children, as I'm sure most of you know. So this is the early intervention component.
Any questions on that part? Right, seeing none. Paige, you need Chloe to scroll down more?
No, I think that right there is the last section with the date that says not later than July 1, 2026. That means that gives us the next year to finalize those details across agencies, preparation, and the workforce.
So everything after that is being removed, it looks like, is that?
Yes.
It is, that's correct. Not because it is going to necessarily not be represented in the guidelines, but that it is not for this I defer to the CPRL folks because it's not for this level of authority or detail.
So would the expectation be that SDE would kind of write up guidelines that they present to the board for this, or that we would write up the guidelines to present? Or how would that work?
Unless Tong says differently, we understand that it would be a continued effort led by SDE in conjunction with OEC and those of us in the workforce and preparation to draft those guidelines. I'm not clear if those guidelines are being brought back to you all or within SDE, but it would be a continued collaborative effort of the workforce and the profession.
Yeah, hi. Oh, sorry. I think we just wanted to chime in, I think. When we sort of talked about it previously, I think there is also room, I think, for this board. It will be collaborative, obviously, and with like the subject matter experts obviously having significant weight in as a page and the group and sort of the early childhood group. But I think we kind of conceived it as, or sort of thought of it as a sort of joint cert board, SDE, within that 1 year time frame to hopefully come up with something robust and meaningful and clear for the field.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I agree with that, given that our job as a board is to modernize and align like educator preparation and certification, that 100% includes birth through 3 certification. And so for us to be in collaboration with SDE and with OEG, that would be good. Ideal.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So going forward for people who are doing like the birth to 3 and preschool, would those positions require a certification in order to serve in those roles according to this?
This is not the only pathway into most of those. if you're thinking of the ones I'm thinking of, this is specific to the SDE jurisdiction, which is public schools. So this would not, the certifications would be A, but they, in many cases, they are not the only pathway into those portions of the workforce and profession.
I think so the reason I have a question is a lot of union contracts have a recognition clause that say if a position requires certification, then those are automatically part of the teachers union and paid by our contract. And I'm wondering if there's any sort of additional burden on districts that are now going to be having more certified staff and therefore having additional salaries. That would, I'm just wondering, because this is new to me, that if we're having expanded certifications, would that mean for boards of ed and superintendents that they have additional positions that would fall under the certified staff pay scale?
Does anybody know, is that for public, for?
If you work in a public school,
You'd be
you
certified.
have to be certified.
Yeah.
Right.
What she's speaking to is that there are other spaces where you have preschool, they're not necessarily under a public school, so you could work in those spaces right now without the certification.
Independent, like an independent.
Glastonbury, I know our town has an early learning center whose staff are not certified. And it's preschool from it's from birth.
Is that
And then preschool is.
But they are not
Under
under.
district? It isn't under the district.
Might be under the town, but not
Their district.
We have the same in New Haven, but it's just like our school readiness and our Head Start programs. Most of our Head Start teachers are certified, but we do have a handful who are not, who are under the paraprofessional contracted lead teachers.
Yeah, so that's what I'm wondering is that if, we had four staff members that are currently working under this certification or this, that are currently considered paras and they're going from birth to 3. And then when the kids move to preschool, then they have the certified teachers. Is there?
It's gonna be the same. So like, we don't oversee like birth to 3 programs. If I have a 112, I can work in a birth to 3 program. And I can work in a public preschool kindergarten. If I don't have the 112, I can still work in these independent and birth to 3. I can't work in the public school pre-K. So that's not changing. It's saying, some schools may say, or so maybe a birth to 3 program says, I want someone who's certified. I can choose that person, but I don't have to. Have options.
I think we need to ask a few more questions because under the new early start Connecticut legislation for OEC, certification is not required. Smart Start funded programs have to have certified teachers. But the early start CT falls under staff member legislation. And that's what Paige was referring to. This C certification recognized by OEC that is early childhood counts as one option. It's not a. And so I know New Haven has done more things too in the past. So I think it's worth asking the questions because we don't want to have unintended surprises later to come out. It's up.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want something where, on the union end, it's great, we get more members, but I wouldn't want necessarily an unfunded mandate for boards of ed that have these programs and all of a sudden you have additional staff members that are now falling in a completely different pay scale than what was anticipated at the start of a fiscal year or something.
I think if the program doesn't change their requirements as far as certifications, then boards of ed should be okay.
Yeah, given the 112, what would be the situation now where with the 112 existing that boards would have to hire differently? I guess I would ask that question.
Down to the program environments.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
Yes, Cynthia.
Oh, sorry, Cynthia, go ahead. I got you. I appreciate it. Usually she's sitting here watching the board for me. So if you could do that, that'd be great. Thank you.
You're on mute, Cynthia.
So sorry. I'm processing as well in the different situations. So we do, in our situation, leverage certified teachers to teach preschool in high quality classrooms funded by Smart Start, and now the Early Start will be coming on board. But I'm thinking about our adult education program that just got NIAC accredited and is doing part day care for adult learners. And those staff are paid hourly. So I'm curious, again, in implementation of this, does that mean now any staff, no matter what program they're serving young children in, would have to be part of the teacher's contract with the certification?
Long as your program didn't require that to be one of the requirements of the position. My understanding.
If we're combining those two certifications, then if you're able to do it under the 112, was it?
Yeah, I mean, the 112 already lets you go down to, but that doesn't mean you don't have to have that. If I have a woman, I can serve in a public school and in these Smart Starts or whatever, the different ones that are birth to 3, because there is no certification requirement from our regulations for that. All we're doing is we're combining that with the other one, which still says at this, on this age level, you're not required. It's just have, it gives people who have that birth to 3 background the ability to also work in a public school. It's not restricting people. Build out for them to go up.
And we're saying birth to 3 because there's an existing birth to 3. We're really saying in birth to 3, we need to birth to
Yes,
3, right?
right now we have
Right, that's
and we have pre-K to 3. So we're making it.
which allows more flexibility, which we've talked about as part of our charge for the candidates or those who hold certificates or certifications to allow them some flexibility in moving up or moving down based on the certification process.
And if you're expanding to include special ed, like right now, the 113 doesn't let you teach special ed grade 1. You would only do special ed or integrated in K. So by expanding it, it's also going to bring other people in special ed, but they only want to do early childhood special ed. They're like, I don't want the 165. I don't want to go up to high school. And so by expanding that lower level, I think you'll bring it.
Thank you.
Any additional?
So the question is just, are there any unintended fiscal?
Yes, I think that was probably a good question. So I think what happens, and just kind of correct me if I'm wrong, Lily, is if we approve this, it would then go to the legislative committee for the state board of ed before it goes to the state board of ed for them to review. And they would kind of identify any potentials and put that into their report that goes then to the state board of education.
Well, yeah, it would have to be presented to the Legislative and Policy Development Committee under the State Board of Ed, and then it would, if approved, it would have to be presented again to the state.
But within that, would there be, through that approval process, do they look at the cost as well?
There's also a financial committee, so if it was deemed necessary, they'd probably like talk about that as well. Yeah.
What may be easier is to perhaps, if you want to be sure before it's taken into policy, or maybe even get some superintendents to share, right? What it is you're trying to do and what could be some things that perhaps you didn't go out. There are some may say, no, because it all depends on specific districts, what programming they have, they all the same. So if we want to be sure, we could. I know Cynthia, you may know best how to best vet this information before we feel that, putting something forward may have financial implications. We could do that.
Can I share an idea? Is the Special Education Committee of the State Board of Ed still meeting? I know they did a lot of legislative work.
The task force,
Yes.
we
Because if
completed
they-
our work, Cynthia.
You did, so there, you're not meeting
Technically
anymore?
been dissolved.
Okay, I was just wondering, since a lot of this is special education related with the birth to three system, that group may be good to share some input on it. And so if that's not an option, maybe through the rest of the special education committees, they could also take a look at this and just share some input.
My superintendent, I believe, is president of CAPS. I can certainly speak with her and see what her thoughts are and bring it back.
Maybe it would bring it to their.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
ask her what her thoughts are from there.
May,
So in
may I
terms of, I'm sorry.
I just would
Go ahead.
ask that we make, no disrespect to anybody, that we make sure that perhaps someone from OEC or that we make sure that people are understanding the multiple layers of workforce and early childhood. That there are so many ways that 3, 4, 5-year-olds are serviced in the state. So I would just ask that we make sure people are clear of the implications for their particular setting.
Just a quick thought, as someone who's thrilled about this, as somebody with a 113 as a self-contained special ed teacher, this is great. For other folks who might not be so excited to potentially be moved into a special ed position, as districts are right sizing and collapsing positions, how will this, I guess, affect requirements in ed programs? Will they need an increase of special education classes for this change in the certification?
Potentially, depending on the program, but it's also about addressing the full span. So it's about addressing what early intervention looks like. It's about addressing the developmental range and typical and atypical under Part C and B. So I think it really will be program dependent, which is why you see that and that's existing programs. Of course, other programs, we have a lot of people who come from out of state at this moment who wind up wavering in. So that's why the 2-year period of developing that, to make sure all the content and experiences are in place within a reasonable degree. So.
Go ahead. I have a clarifying question. Jenny, to this. I heard you say like that people could be placed like without their wanting to be placed somewhere. And I feel like in one of our former meetings, somebody was saying that like a teacher has to be asked, like they can't just be like placed without saying.
That is not true. It's called an involuntary transfer. It's happening, I think, probably all over the state right now, as districts are facing like big budget crises.
Right, I know that for the budget cuts and the involuntary transfer, can you clarify that, Cynthia? Because my understanding is like if she's not here today, but she was saying like, no, you can't. Go ahead, do you have clarity?
Yeah, I think I know what you're asking about. It was the emergency shortage area. Do you remember? Not the other one.
Yeah, where they
The 1-year emergency.
Yeah, the 1-year emergency shortage.
They have to sign off.
That teacher
The teacher
does
has to
have to
sign
sign off, but an involuntary transfer, it's whatever you're certified for, you can be transferred to. So I think that's why there was some pushback with the grade expansion, because before, like physics, right? I could teach 7 to 12.
Now it's
But now it's 4 to 12, and what's physics look like for a 4th grade? But I think, so it's 2 different things.
Okay, so if it's an emergency, the teacher is empowered to like, I can sign for this or not.
Yes.
And if it's not, then you can just be signed whether you want to or not.
For anything you're certified in.
Yeah, if
That
anything.
might just be want to think about, because if
Yes, we should.
We're gonna take 112 and 113, you're gonna combine and make this new endorsement. There are people who are still gonna have the 112 and and they haven't been prepared. Like if I have the 112, I haven't been prepared to work in lower elementary. If I have the 113, I've been prepared to work with infants and toddlers. So there's probably gonna be a pathway to add the new endorsement. Can choose to add it or not, because I don't think it's up to you all, but I'm thinking you're not gonna say, oh, everyone who has a 113 can now work with infants and toddlers if they haven't been prepared.
Paige just got her hand up, and I think she wants to address that, because if I remember reading correctly, that would not change. They could keep their 112 and grandfather in. correct?
The
Everyone
the discussion was, what would grandfathering look like, or would, like cross endorsements currently, would there be some requirement to meet X number of credits in the, I'll say the other developmental end? So that's the devil in the details of the guidelines. And I just want to, I really respect financial conversations, but part of the push of this legislation was because of other expansions, we have people in elementary and in special ed who have come down to the pre-K level who have not been prepared for that work. And so this is partly centering the knowledge and the importance of early childhood preparation and or learning experiences for our youngest children. So those don't have to be in contrast, but I just want to come back and say the reason for this was to have people be able to really focus on and work in multiple settings of the early childhood work.
You guys did quite a study on that, kind of from a task force that was already very detailed on how that should look and it came out of that. Did someone have a raised hand? Cynthia?
Thank you. I did. Just, I guess, more thinking and comments. There's definitely a need, and I definitely support continued pathways for more people to receive training and be highly qualified to serve our youngest learners. There's definitely a need. But besides just having a new certification, obviously there has to be the track of what the EPPs are doing, and then the ongoing professional development, and then the support for those that don't have their college degree. So I guess I'm trying to piece together the bigger picture of supports for this pathway or pipeline, which is really our work. Are all of those in place as we also talk about this new endorsement? Will there be a bridge opportunity for those to earn this endorsement? Are the EPPs ready for coursework to support this?
Speaking for ECHAC, I can say that this Ryan articulated this at the last meeting, that this over a year of active work with having met with both commissioners and multiple years before that, grant task force work through the legislation, the intent has been to create a career ladder, if you will, pathways that are viable. We have too many really dedicated early educators who are not able to stay in the area of the work that they love and are impactful, and or not able to make a career move for themselves at different points over their life. So this is part of why that early education language is in there, to acknowledge that this document is addresses the purview of SDE, but that there is an entire birth to 8 early childhood span profession and workforce that connects to the larger national work as well. So that we are doing better by the adults and continuing to make sure we have high quality for our children at those developmental places.
So if I'm understanding the current document, it doesn't go into full effect until 2028. So you're talking a little bit over 2.5 years. And during that 2.5 years, there would be a collaborative discussion of guidance and guidelines between the board, Pages organization, possibly CPRL or our admin and SDE to kind of hammer out those finer details and answer those finer questions. I think at the moment, it's a matter of, do we want to move this forward to State Board of Education with that kind of blurb of, over the next 2.5 years or so, we are going to be doing the work of addressing what the guidelines and specific details are.
I want someone else to fact check me. I want to make sure that we're being accurate. The document says that by 2026, we would put the piece, I want to have
Yes.
integrity here as to
Yes,
restate
twenty
what.
twenty-six, but then later on it says, issued prior to like 2028. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong. number.
Exactly, 2028 is when it's the overlap time of creating something new and having the old. So that's well, really 3-year overlap between now and 2028. But the new, the 2026 date is in there. So I didn't hear you say 2026, Jennifer, so I wanted to make sure everyone's
Correct. I did
clear.
not say 2026, so good catch on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I want people to vote on the right thing.
Sure.
And I
So
can
are
unmute
we
now. So I just wanted to, yeah, I was just saying I can unmute now. Thank God. So I can, I just, yeah, so you would, so the sort of CERT board and state board would, by that 2026 date, have established all of the detail, which would put the sort of programs on notice of what they would need to adjust in their programs, if anything, and then they would have an additional couple of years before the actual endorsement would be issued. So it was designed to have enough runway for programs to be able to adjust.
So I guess my question is for the board to kind of, we use this board as part of our report for July 1st. Do we then approve what we have here with a paragraph that continuing work on guidelines and guidance, with the different stakeholders to move forward the remainder of it? And to submit that to the board within that time framework.
Motion to move forward.
Move forward now.
I second that.
As is. Right, do you have any discussion on that? Sarah, go ahead.
I guess I will just express a concern, and maybe it's something that is worked on through the educator prep programs of the state, as it sounds like it's being discussed. And it may not be the purview of this board, so this may just be a personal concern that the guidelines for preparation are very important. And if they're not written down somewhere, and they're not, who's going to follow through to make sure that preparation is happening? Like that, to me, someone prepared to teach birth to grade 3, while it makes efficient and it allows the doors to open for more people, there's a lot of professional learning you will have to do. And the same for grades 4 through 12. And maybe it's not the purview of this board, but I just personally feel like somebody's got to keep an eye on that. Who's doing that?
I'm sorry, Catherine?
So in the last session, when we were doing the council, we discussed that the CAPE accreditation was the umbrella, and that everything would be aligned with the early childhood standards. So in order for us to meet the CAPE accreditation, we would also need to meet those early college and other pieces with that alignment. So I think that's where your quality assurance comes in. And I don't know that that's written in the regulations, but it probably is somewhere, because I know that we talked about it at the council, and I just don't know where that lives. And someone can just maybe CEPL, the folks from CEPL can maybe direct us to that.
Yeah, I believe that's in the statute when the endorsement areas were broadened. The one that's relevant for the elementary grades going down to pre-K reference that. So it's in the statute itself.
So are we fine moving this forward as is the motion that's on the floor? Or is anyone suggesting an amendment that might add language of ongoing collaboration with the task force to ensure guidelines are developed by the 2026 date?
There's a motion on the floor right now.
Right.
So it would either need to be.
So is anyone looking to amend based on the conversation?
Can I just clarify one thing about the process? So this is a draft for regulatory change, which means you would first go to the state board and get the approvals you need for this proposal, but then you would have to actually go through the regulatory process. So there's like an extra step here. then like once it's sort of codified in the regulation, this requirement that you come up with these guidelines by next summer would be in the regulation itself. So I just want to make sure it's clear that there's another step even after this proposal itself is approved by the state board.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Thank you. All right, so as it stands, are there any questions about the current motion to move this forward in the second? Right, seeing none, all in favor of moving this forward to State Board of Education, say aye or raise your hand. Fine. It appears to be unanimous and carries. Or no, and did we not?
She did by.
Oh, she did. Wait, by. Oh, she did physically by hand. Thank you. Good, thanks. All right, so that has moved forward. Thank you all for that work and the continued work ahead on that.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
We have now an update from Kristen on 13A3.
All right, so we were able to meet last week for about an hour. We don't have any particular motions we're moving as an ad hoc committee forward since we did not have quorum. But we were able to have an open meeting where we looked at 2 proposals and were able to give each other a lot of feedback. There were particularly some really great ideas about mentorship. That one was from Cynthia. There was a great idea about like 10 hours of professional development for people who score a certain score with relation to the praxis or other assessment. We talked about possibly leveraging TVAL for a goal for content knowledge. We talked about having formal observations as a potential way of meeting that minimum content knowledge. So there were lots of good discussions. I know that I have a proposal that I'd like us to review together, and I know Rebecca Good has a proposal. And one thing we were talking about is that we need lots of feedback, we need lots of discussion. And it's kind of difficult to do as an ad hoc committee because then instead of having a board of 16, we have 3 people, or 4 people. But I think we had really good ideas. So that's what I've got as the committee work. And I think, would you like me to open anything up to discussions of the 2 proposals now, or do you want me to wait?
So what I would say is, because we haven't had a quorum, I think in the last 2 meetings. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and say to kind of move the work forward with you. You guys have done an excellent job. You've really vetted quite a few proposals. You've been very creative in the work you guys have done. Really appreciate that and bringing it forward. But we'll go ahead and dissolve that group, that ad hoc, and just bring it to here and have the conversations here to kind of wrap it up and move the work forward. That sound good? All right, let's move that forward then if you want to go ahead and discuss the 2 options I think that are in our packets that I'm looking at.
So, I had previously made a superintendent waiver proposal, which was tabled. And I would move to bring it back to the table so that we can have further discussion, alongside some edits that I've made in bold. One is about a 1-year pilot, one is about 10 hours of content specific. But I'd like to make a motion, untable it and bring it back for further discussion. Second.
Shannon, second. All in favor? Or was there any discussion on that? Are we good with it? All right, all in favor, raise your hand. Like we have everyone on board. Thank you.
Okay, so while you're reviewing it, I know you've seen many drafts of this over the course of the past few months. Just to give a little background of why I'm making this proposal is that I was looking to make a proposal that's similar to the Praxis 2 Bridge in that it's 4 candidates that have taken their content knowledge assessment but aren't quite there. And we're trying to come up with another pathway for them to show this minimum content knowledge. I know that I wanted to have something where if teachers are showing their content knowledge in the classroom, that that experience would be able to bridge that last bit. However, I will say that we originally started, this has been through lots of edits. So I originally started with a 2 SEM window and got feedback that was too narrow. So then I made a proposal to change it to a 3 SEM weaver. In the original draft of this, there was like a state board process where people would ask, like once they met the requirements of their 1 year of service, they'd be like presenting to this board. And over the course, there's been lots of edits. Like we moved from 2 years of service to 1 year of service to go to acknowledge that the fact that it's difficult to have 2 years of service as a requirement if DSAP only lasts 3 years. We got the feedback that it should be a pilot program. So if there's any sort of data, we can adjust changes. And with Ajit's presentation earlier, he made it pretty clear, and I would agree with him that, you know, 2 SEMs or 3 SEMs are not good measurements. I originally took those thinking that would be like, oh, 15% of candidates. I want to be able to take candidates who are getting, sorry to like put it in terms of grades, who are like getting a C and help them show that they are able to do this content, can move them up to a B, and be able to show that that last bit can be done through their teaching. So I didn't realize that so many teachers were already within 1 SEM. So I would be open to making an amendment to change the 3 standard errors of measurement to 1 standard error of measurement. Because the Praxis Bridge is great, and I was so enthusiastic about the results they were showing earlier. But it doesn't cover AIFs till early childhood, as you mentioned, foundations of reading, reading specialist, ASL, and then the whole bunch of Praxis 2s that don't have a module yet. So that's, you know, physics, art, English, health and PE, like many of them. So if you would allow me to make an amendment to have this be achieve a score within 3 standard errors of measurement, change it from that to the 1 standard error of measurement. I was really hoping to have a pathway for all these other candidates that maybe, you know, they know a good amount of content, but they struggle with how long the test is, or they know a good amount of content and, you know, that day they had a headache, or they have test anxiety. It's something that's 4 hours long is a struggle. So knowing that 1 SEM covers 38 to 40% of candidates, I am much more comfortable doing a 1 SEM standard error instead of 3 SEMs. And I would welcome any feedback on this proposal.
I'm just though changing that one part. I just want to make sure.
All of the parts of the.
Okay. I mean, I would agree with changing that 3 SEMs to 1 standard error measurement based on what we heard today.
Yep, and it's an alignment too.
Yeah. I'd give everybody like a minute to maybe look it over, and then we can start taking some questions if there's any questions on it. Comments and questions.
There, so I'm curious because if yours and I have so much similarities, can I feel like we should present them both and then we can like have a larger conversation.
Do you want to give everybody a moment to look this one over and then we'll go into yours? Okay, so let's give everybody a couple of minutes to just read over Kristen's, and then we'll have Dr. Good present hers and give folks a moment to review that as well, and then have a conversation about it.
Ready, if you can give me a thumbs up, and that way I know. For my students. Did we say that we were gonna discuss this one, or we were gonna listen?
Feedback will be helpful for both. So, for the minimum content knowledge proposal that I'm sharing, think of 3 groups of teachers. Imagine we have 1,000 candidates coming in. They've all finished their EPP program. 700 of those, if we, like Ajit was saying, 700 of those are going to pass they're going to pass all their exams, Praxis 2, Foundations of Reading, Practices Early Childhood Test on the first take. And so that 700 candidates, they go in, they don't need to do anything extra. And then I think what we heard today is, let's say 20% of the leftover kind of 30% that didn't pass, 20% of them came within one SEM. And so they actually have an option for a bridge. We don't have clarity on how the Foundations of Reading works with that. And so I'm excited to hear what potentially a bridge pathway is for them. That's like, so imagine 700 already cleared. Now we have another 200. We're down to 100 candidates out of 1,000 who are not within one SEM, did not pass on their first time. What about that 100? That's my group 3. So imagine 100 candidates go into a waiver option. It empowers the candidate to choose which waiver option, depending on how close they are to the EPP, meaning have they been out of their EPP for 5, 10 plus years and decided to like make their way back in? They actually might want to go with waiver option 2, which is a district approved waiver, which is very similar to what Kristen has presented. They might be fresh out of their EPP, and the EPP then has opportunities. I will name in my EPP, we have opportunities for candidates to improve upon their base content knowledge. That is by an EPP decision. EPPs do it in very different ways, and then we should trust the EPP can handle it from there. Once they have done that, the EPP then submits the waiver. These waiver, upon completion of whichever waiver is approved, if the EPP says, yes, you have satisfied what we determine is needed to close that gap. If the district says you've done these things, that is satisfactory of closing our gap, we'll submit a waiver on your behalf. Then that goes directly to SDE and nothing else is needed. That is the waiver that moves them forward. Now, of that 100 candidates, I'm not saying that 100 of them are going to be able to get through that waiver part. Maybe that's only 50 candidates. And then the other 50 candidates, you have done everything you can. You are not able to demonstrate content knowledge in all these different areas. And so this is not the path forward for you at this time in your life to go into the classroom and teach. That is the proposal I'm putting forth.
I slightly just be proportional with the percentages. Of the 1,000, 700 would pass first time, only 120 were eligible. That leaves 180 in this third bucket. So I just think the numbers matter.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bigger portion aren't eligible for credits than are the 38 to 40.
Wait, can you give me that numbers again? Because based on what I was saying, okay, say it again.
So of the 1,000 who take a test, if 70% pass on their first,
You're saying 180 of them with the.
be in the group 3. Only 100, he said 38 to 40 are eligible. That's only 100 and
Right.
And then 100 left in that group. So it's
But it might also be that not everything has a Praxis 2 bridge, so it says 30%, maybe it is 20% because these tests are not qualified for Praxis 2.
So then the 120 is even smaller. I'm just trying to make the point that your group 3 is a bigger group and you're
Like just like 10%. So there might be 20% in that group. 200 folks.
But I think I mean, we're talking about like, these aren't small numbers. These are large percentage that we need a solution for that bridge does not provide for. Significant.
Can I just ask one clarifying question? For option 2, did you mean to say upon completion of the above EPP approved steps, the EPP submits a minimum content knowledge fulfillment? Because option 2 doesn't have anything about employment, so I'm just wondering why it would be the district superintendent or designee signing off. Option one, I'm sorry, for waiver option one.
Two, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. Waiver option one.
Waiver option one, and what was the question?
It says upon completion of the above EPP approved steps, the district superintendent or designee submits.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the EPP.
Yeah, that's what I figured you meant, but I just thought you might want, yeah. Right, so option two makes sense that it's the superintendent, but I was confused why option, I thought you
Yep,
maybe
yep,
meant.
yep, you're right, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that takes care of one question. Yes.
Yeah.
So well, do you want to give everybody, you can read?
Yeah,
it,
give it
or
a
if I
final
like talk them all out.
So if we give everybody a chance to kind of read it over, and then we'll go right into the question, right?
I'm reading waiver option one and waiver option two specifically for just.
Only for group three.
Thank you.
For discussion, Coach Becca and Kristen, do you want to start? With one? both?
Anything.
Okay.
I'm Kristen, are you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let us know which one you're referencing when you're.
Yes.
Go ahead, so maybe we know which one we're looking at. Go ahead, Tracy.
Okay, so a clarifying question. In Christian's, it talks about completion of a minimum of 10 hours of content, like professional development. Who determines what that will be? Is that a local?
Yeah, I meant
or state
I
question?
meant to put that in. When we had discussed it in the ad hoc committee, we were talking about professional development that you would undertake. Content specific professional development that your evaluator at your district helps you agree to. So let's say, my supervisor is the science supervisor. She helps pick relevant content, professional development. And that kind of also makes sure there's no unfunded mandate where now the district has to pay for coursework the teacher wants to take, but maybe the district doesn't have money for. So for the 10 hours of content knowledge, that would be coordinated with your supervisor through the teacher evaluation program.
And then a follow-up question. It concludes with upon review of evidence, the SD consider the minimum content knowledge fulfilled. What would that evidence be?
So it would be I was thinking the evidence would be the documentation. So show that they've completed their EPP, that they have their 1 SEM cut score or score within 1 SEM. They've completed their professional development. They've had their year of teaching experience, and the superintendent or designee is the person who signs off at the end. Showing that they have successfully done their content knowledge.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
And then we'll go to Jen Delaney, just so Jen knows.
where did the 10 full months come from? I'm just curious, because there are some times that for some individuals, I don't want to keep some people out who may not be able to demonstrate everything in 10 months. It may have not been a good fit, the space that they're in. They may have not had a good, relationship with whoever is observing them. There's a lot of factors that first year that someone may not be able to demonstrate. And so I was just curious why 10 months.
Yeah, actually, what happened was we had started with 20 months, 2 years, similar to the state waiver, the one that goes to the State Board of Ed and okay. So we started with 20 months, 2 years, and then in our discussions, we were talking about how, well, there's so many reasons why that second year of employment might be difficult. You might decide it's not a good fit with your district might decide you're not a good fit for them, so that having that second year would be an undue burden and would start to remove people from eligibility. So it was pared down to the 1 year to show that, in 1 year as an uncertified or a new teacher, you'd be getting your 5 or 6 observations, depending on what your district's teacher evaluation program. So I wanted the 1 year so that you get that multiple evaluations with your supervisor.
Jen?
Hi, everybody. Well, a couple things. The first was in both proposals, they talk about a temporary certification. So what would that certification be? Would we have to design a new one? Like, for example, people who graduate from my program have a 90-day certification under their whatever we train them for, and it's a specific certification with a specific application that we send over called an ED 125 to the state. And then once that happens, like our part is done. Now it's up to the school district in those 90 days to observe the candidate, and a superintendent or designee then fills out the paperwork for their initial certification, just like other EPPs that are able to give initial certifications fill out. So I was curious about that. I don't know if Julianne Frost might still be there to answer that question. And then the other thing I was thinking is, I was actually thinking the other way around, like, why so long? Why 10 months? Because if they're only within one SEM, they didn't miss by much on the content knowledge. One SEM isn't that much missed. So in an EPP, we have to measure their content knowledge, especially in the classroom, right? During student teaching or practicum. So one of the things that's been observed is, can you do the job in the role as a novice in student teaching, in practicum? And their methods instructors are looking for that as well. And that's part of the CAPE standards, is making, how do we make sure they know the content knowledge? And one of those ways we use is, of course, also the praxis too. But another way we do it is through other measures like that, for example. So do we really need it to be so long is my question, because if they passed their EPP and they did everything they need to get their degree or their certification, the only thing they're missing is the Praxis 2 passing score, and they're within one SEM, does it have to be so long? Is that a deterrent to doing this? Is it a deterrent to hire somebody when you're a school district? Now you have to put so much more extra time into this person. You're already short on resources. You're already short on people. Who are you going to put them with? So I'm curious if maybe a 90-day cert or some other shorter than 10 months may be an option for people here to consider. So yeah, I see Julianne sat down.
All right, before we go into the certification, like which certification is this? I want to remind us, we are only talking about minimum content knowledge. And if we go down the rabbit hole of within our current certification, is it 90 days, is it temporary, is it the rec, is it this? It actually, this is what we learned on the ad hoc, it can take us down a rabbit hole that doesn't actually, let's figure out this part first and then discuss the certification. So I know you've got a lot of information, but right now it's really based on what we are going to do for the minimum content knowledge. And to your 90 days versus 10 months, I think is a really great, like a great wondering, why does it need to be kind of longer? We are not, minimum content is not testing, my ad hoc folks will be happy that I'm about to say this, is not testing your pedagogical approach. It's not testing how you teach physics. It's testing you on, do you have a base level of physics knowledge in your brain? And so that to get that, we thought the full academic year, while there's tons of wonderful pedagogical experiences that a candidate is having, they need time to be able to go to the different professional developments or a conference to bolster their content understanding and knowledge. Did I get that right, team? It took them a minute to convince me of this, so I want to represent it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, because we all have to be brought up to speed on, what's already happened at the ad hoc. So I appreciate that. And then my third point was going to be, if we do end up going the route of the extra hours, et cetera, as proposed in both of training, what I don't know. I think we need some kind of bar set for that. For example, like it has to be by some sort of institution that is recognized, like NCAID not NCAID. Help me with the math institution that
CTM.
Thank you.
And
Yes,
CTE.
other types of organizations like that host, or like Colt has a lot of world language training because they're a state recognized, a group that trains, membership group that trains world language teachers.
Would that maybe come in the, devil's in the details?
Yes.
In terms of guidance and guidelines, like once we kind of figured out which way we
What
want to go.
direction we want to
And
go.
I do also want to add a little bit, an additional kind of thing to think about is, when we had updated our last board meeting, part of that update was hearing some of the education committee's feedback. And part of that feedback was that they wanted to see something that had a longer period of time, like a residency-esque, programming. So I think we've
That
kind of
makes
took
sense.
that back and kind of tried to incorporate that as well in that thinking.
Yeah.
To move it forward.
Kristen.
Yeah, because I'm wondering if
with the
something. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify with the change to instead of 3 SEMs to 1 SEM. And is this like instead of doing the bridge, or where a bridge is not possible, then they would do this? Or because I feel like that's not.
So originally,
Remember, it was about the extras, about people who didn't fall in.
I feel like this was years ago. So in my original proposal, I had said specifically for people who are not bridge eligible. So that's my thinking, like when I was originally writing this would really be most important for the people who don't have a bridge option. And, with this being a 1 year instead of a 2 year, this still gives them time. If this first district was not a good fit, then they can move to a different district. Or if you're taking this additional professional development and training, you can still be doing more than one thing. You could be trying to take the practice again. You could be trying to get your content knowledge in whichever works first. And what I was really hoping for today was lots of discussion and feedback, now that there's no July 1st deadline that we have to give a distinct answer. So this has been a really good discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be the only thing I would think of right now is it's either National Council of Teachers of Math or Colt or some kind of state or national membership organization that provides trainings, or the school district has training that they bring in, so that way it doesn't put the onus on the school district too. Someone mentioned that, and I thought that was important.
We also wanted to be flexible in terms of cost. right? This is gonna,
Right,
if you
yeah.
are taking in my option, the waiver option to be able to engage in professional development at whose cost? District, the candidate, and this is a new teacher, so we're trying to be flexible enough where cost is not a barrier.
So there's definitely overlap between the two, and there's a lot of questions, for questions and things to consider. Are there any additional questions for Rebecca's
Yes,
proposal at this time?
I have more, yes.
I'm sorry. Hold on, Jen.
Someone else can go. I just, I'll put my hand back up. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. We'll go Margaret, Cynthia, and then Jen, okay? And then Sarah, perfect.
I just have a question on timing. Is this open-ended opportunity or is this within 1 year of not passing, testing? What, how far down the road can someone go with this? 5 years later and decide like, hey, I want to jump in this?
I mean, I think that's one of the things that I was looking at because there are people who are far removed from their EPP. Like maybe you graduated, but then life happened and babies occurred. Maybe you're like decided to take another path for a little bit. I didn't have any proposal to what that cutoff should, if any. But that's the thing we could think about.
Especially if it's a pilot. I want to give someone the impression that a year, come back, and then next year, you guys said.
But now you're not there.
How many years can someone be back without certification? 3, correct? So maybe we consider that like within a 3-year window of like that DSAP availability, and that might even hit the question that was posed about what temporary certification, maybe it's the DSAP certification, that falls under, and it would allow them that 3-year period to kind of go through that.
That's what we use the DSAP for now. Like
Yeah.
they complete their program, they just need the testing and they might, as long as they're trying the testing, they can use that DSAP. We have one issuance, 2 renewals, and even a hardship. So there are cases where we even do 4 DSAPs.
I just have, just for my attestation from district superintendent designate that they want to hire them. Or that they completed all this. I just.
That they have been performing, as a teacher of record.
Okay, all these things.
Showing, yes, so showing that in their teaching, the content knowledge is appropriate. And with this, the reason I wasn't looking at other mentoring outside of TVAL is worried about district resources. If it's hard to get enough team teachers, if it's hard enough to have your administrators have their, the number of supervisions they need to do, that it's within like the teacher evaluation program. So they're saying at the end of the year, I know that TVAL doesn't have the ratings anymore, but this would be your educator that would have formerly been under like acceptable or excellent.
I have a question about the timing. I just want to answer for Margaret. The time span, when I'm thinking of it, if I took the Praxis 8 years ago and it's the same test, like I wouldn't be told that I have to like, and I passed it, or if I didn't pass it, I would still be, I mean, we just retroactively looked back at SEMs. If I have a degree, my degree doesn't like run out after 5 years. And so I would actually, if everybody took the Praxis, if it's the same exam today that it was 8 years ago, they do change. That's why I'm like, right, like if it's a new,
Every 5 years.
right, so if it's you gotta take the newest one and then determine where you fall in that group. So I wouldn't have a 3-year time limit. I don't see.
Do a 3-year pilot?
I don't think I understand what you mean by like pilot.
Because calls it a pilot up here, 1-year pilot at the top, so maybe changing it to right.
Seems favorable to look at both of them as pilots, data. But then in just thinking about, as you all explained, that's change, right? If someone comes back 8 years later, it's a different world. I want them to even go down this path. So just trying to figure out some of the details of
Looping back.
or it gets out there to the public, which is a long piece away, but the devil's in the implementation.
That's helpful. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. That was. Yes, both of you. Appreciate that discourse. So Bartek, Cynthia, and now Jen, and then Sarah.
Okay. So as far as the things that just came up, I also would be concerned about putting a time limit on it. I think that you've done everything else in your degree. This is the only thing that's left, whatever paused you from going into the profession. As long as the test is the same, like Dr. Good said, you can complete that requirement. If the school district wants to hire you, that's something that I would be in favor of. But also, the pilot piece, I would urge us to not do any pilot approach. Like what we write in is what are the new regulations. Because then we have to decide now. I think that'll slow us down actually in modernizing, because then we only have this organization, this board for 3 years, right? So I don't think we'd have a lot of time. Am I correct in that or wrong?
No, our
We have
board is
3-year board?
established. We have 3-year terms.
3-year terms,
So,
okay.
3-year terms. And what
Okay.
I would say is the bridges was a pilot and we looked at the data and we said, this looks really good. Let's keep moving it forward. So I think in terms of like making sure that we're doing kind of in really informed decision making, I think a pilot would be a really good option. And we could see the number of people who go through, what's working, what's not, maybe able to tweak it a bit before we make it very formal.
Okay, thank you. That's why I was thinking, like, if we disband after 3 years, I don't think a pilot would be great, but that makes a lot of sense as long as this is not disbanded. Okay, and then the question I originally had that I wanted to come back to was the waiver 1 in Dr. Good's approach. Like, what exactly what would be acceptable for an EPP? I know Dr. Good said we would leave it up to the EPP. They're accredited institutions, right? We entrust them. But what would that look like? Do we have any more ideas around that, or do we have any people on the board who are concerned about what that would look like? Being an EPP director, I'd like to know up front before kind of making decisions on which approach to take.
Yeah, I think Catherine, I think Jennifer, you as well, and Anne, like, do you want to name what some of those options would look like besides the one I put in the examples?
I don't have your examples right in front of me, but certainly if I had someone who couldn't pass praxis or didn't have a bridge, came back to me, I might look at coursework that they need to complete. I might look at a portfolio proposition. I might even do what waiver 2 says, where you have to do some, professional development attendance, or there's a seminar that's on, whatever. So NCTM is having this, I want you to do that. I mean, it would really depend on the individual candidate and what the area is, what the discipline area is, and then what I thought was the best route for them. But I do think that EPPs have inside information on who the candidate is and where the strengths and weaknesses are. And so I trust EPPs to make that decision. These aren't candidate, large numbers. So we kind of do that anyway. It's just that we're helping them to prepare for the bridge, or prepare, if there's not a bridge, to retake the praxis, but we do the same thing. This just sort of gives us the opportunity not to have to go back to retake the praxis, just simply show me, the content. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's
I have
some ideas.
Sarah
Yeah.
and then Cynthia Ritchie.
Yeah.
Is there Catherine after, or did Catherine want to reply to Jen?
I was really replying to Dr. Good. So thanks, Rebecca. I think that this was I think that both of the plans were very well developed. I do have a concern with the capacity of the EPPs, whether or not they're going to be able to monitor students post-graduation, especially if we're talking about a larger percentage. But and this is, of course, this is totally not either one of the proposals, but you know, the EPP is charged with working with the district, co-selecting, co-designing, co-creating. That's our CAPE accreditation, right? Is this something that we can do with the district, in conjunction with the district? Well, the district has the lift, the district's going to be doing the observation and then giving the information back to the EPP. So the EPP is no longer in charge. Once a student graduates, I mean, unless they submit right now, unless they submit their teacher certification, the EPP's out of it. I don't know. Is there something that we can do where we have the districts inform the EPP knowledge through that
I think
year's?
we talked about that, Catherine. I mean, Rebecca, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of collaborating with the school district under like waiver 1, where, for example, formal observations, you might still use the same instrument that was used for student teaching, for example. The same evaluation instrument that would have been used by the EPP, things like that, that actually maintain the same standards and level of data.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Waiver option 1 does give that, Catherine, that option to an EPP. If your EPP decides to collaborate really closely with the district, then that's great. That waiver option 1 gives that. That's what that EPP decides, versus if my EPP is like, oh, we actually have this tutoring program that they would attend, and like that's what I want to do, then at my EPP, then I would have the option of doing that. But it allows us to diversify how EPPs respond if a candidate chooses to go the EPP approved waiver route. Sorry, I keep going.
I want to go ahead and move on to Sarah and then to Dr. Ritchie.
I mean, my questions kind of connect to the things we're talking about, but they really are around, in both proposals, there's a cost and there's accountability. So do we flesh those things out later? Because I think for the cost piece, we'll have to work with the state and districts and the EPPs. Like the EPPs have to agree to do this, and there's a cost. And there should be accountability. So do we factor that in? I don't know if we need to factor it into the initial proposal. Someone's got to do that work. I think calling both of them pilots is also a good idea because it allows us to get the stakeholders, the superintendents involved. It allows us to get the EPPs involved and have a say in the process. So I do think calling it a pilot makes sense.
All right, Dr. Ritchie?
Thank you. I was part of the committee and the brainstorm, and I'm still very energized about both of these proposals. So thank you for bringing them forward. I think there's a lot of benefits to both, and my thinking always goes to comprehensive measures, though, kind of looking at the candidate from the eyes of the candidate doing the work in the classroom, as well as the supportive measures around the person to make sure they're really supported and able to kind of fly through their career. So what I do like about waiver option 2 is that the person is employed. So that's, one of our goals is to get people in the pipeline. And I like it because they then are kind of uplifted with some choice and professionalism to help co-look for their learning. And the conversation that we had in the group was, it doesn't have to be a college course. It doesn't have to be an expensive webinar. There may not be cost to this if we work together. So for example, finding a research article or connecting with a colleague in a surrounding district that could mentor you, working with your RESCs for professional development, working with your supervisor. So we talked about a lot of different ways to get some additional learning. So I like the employment. I like the supportive mentor and your supervisor. I love the continued learning that could be self-directed, documented, and it could help with networking. And I love the application of new knowledge. So I think it's critical to have observations because we don't want to just send someone to learning. We actually want to see them be able to apply it in the classroom. And I like how the observation format is tied to T-val with the goal setting and the observation. So we don't ever want to give one more thing to teachers, but if we can embed it in what's legislatively required, I think this is a really nice match. So kind of in summary, we're employing, we're supporting, we could continue to learn and build capacity and network people. I like how candidates get ongoing feedback while utilizing existing tools for documentation and accountability. So your observations could be shared with an EPP. That's another idea. Your list, your log of learning could be shared maybe with the EPP to try to share that data so that both can agree this person has demonstrated success and can move on.
Yeah. So one outstanding question and concern that I have is just with teacher evaluations, I know that those are protected private documents, so I don't actually know if once it's something that's part of your teacher evaluation, if that could go back to your EP. I don't know if that is legal to share. I know that teacher evaluations can't be FOI'd, for instance. But if it was something like Jen Delaney had mentioned where, it's not the EPP that does the initial certification recommendation, it's your district because that's who you're hired with. If it was something like that, I think that could be a way where the evaluation, the legally protected information of that teacher doesn't need to go back to the EPP. So I think there could be ways forward, and we just need to think about what those ways could be without privacy violation.
So at this moment, I don't think that we're gonna be making decisions on these two individually. Right at this time, we're definitely having great conversations around this, and we'll bring this back to like our next meeting, continue those conversations. But I would take a motion at this time to either discontinue discussion on it and move it to the next meeting or table it to the next meeting. So moved, thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that?
Just before you said that, Dr. Rowe had put her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Online here. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks. I just wanted to bring up that, the apprenticeship pilot that CSDE is sponsoring, the apprentices are moving through a year-long kind of a medical model. And at the end of, or during their program, they're going to be monitored by a very specific instrument that's going to be aligned with Connecticut standards and so forth. And I wonder if I can get my hands on that when it becomes available and share it with the group as a means to, for either EPPs or districts to use the same instrument, and it would be able to provide that information. Just a note, in fact, those students that go through the apprenticeship, they do not have to take, and I know Lauren and Julia are there, but it's my understanding that they do not need to complete the praxis at the end of that apprenticeship. So I think that's something that's already out there. And
but I'm sorry, just to kind of for the time, do you have access to that?
There was some previous to that document. Someone in our office does. I don't, but yeah.
Would we be able to?
Jessica has it. Jessica has it. So Jessica Alciero.
Ocasio.
So we could reach out to get that document then and share it with the board, and then we can have further discussions with that document at the meeting. We can do that conversation. Doctor, is there anything else to add to that? All right, so is there any further discussion on that? All right, we just need to take a vote to move this to the next meeting. All those in, or August meeting, all those in favor? And this moves forward, thank you. All right, so we will continue this discussion. You know, Rebecca and Kristen, if there's anything you want to kind of, you take them back, like look at, and then you submit to us to have as part of that meeting for review. If you'd like to do that. All right, the next part is section 13B. April is on as well to assist with this. I think this might be like one of our final components of our statutory obligations. I've been working with CEQA on this, and much of what's in this particular document is already addressed in other statutory obligations we have. So they reference those in here. So for example, 13B is to undertake a review of certification endorsement areas for the purpose of developing standards regarding adequate residence. We've already kind of looked at those standards and are developing criteria in our other statutory obligations, and as well as the cross endorsement component of that. And then there was another one in there, reading. Consider whether to transfer authority over candidate admission criteria for alternative routes to certification programs. That was the thought exchange that was sent out a while back. And I think we were all wondering what all 1, 2, and 3 really meant. And Stephen was really good at explaining that. And that was kind of the notes that came out, or the themes that came out of the thought exchange. Ultimately, when I met with Jen Delaney, who really explained a lot to myself and April, these alternative routes already set their own criteria for admissions. So there really isn't anything necessarily for us to do within this, because they already have autonomy in that. So we think that these were kind of like some leftover items from the council last year that kind of got like placed into the legislation, but it's already being addressed in other places. So if we go through this document, there are some things that we can work on afterwards, because we've already come up with criteria for both endorsement and cross endorsement. But things that we might want to consider is, for example, we changed the elementary to pre-K through 41.
Six.
Six, thank you. And the reading interventionist one doesn't say that. So I think the reading intervention certification is
The 102.
I think it's the 102. So it doesn't go down to pre-K. So we might want to consider whether we want to adjust that or not.
To have specifically say K-12.
102 is a 112.
There's a 112. So we want it to go down to pre-K for that, to kind of align with the current other certifications. So those were some suggestions that they put into this document. So if you want to take a moment to read over the document, and then if we have any questions, we can start addressing them.
Crazy.
Ever viewing, just give me a thumbs up so I can move to the new
Jen, could I make a point of order?
Sure.
This morning at like 8:15 is when I got the email with all of these attachments, including this information. Is there any way that we could get a lot of these materials well before the meeting so that we could really spend time reading them and absorbing them before the meeting?
The documents were sent out 3 days prior, I believe.
I thought they were sent on Friday.
I got a couple emails.
I got one on Friday, one this morning.
Yeah.
I got most of them this morning. Most of them were this
Most
morning.
of
They
it
were
was
all this
this
Friday.
morning.
So Fridays has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Fridays has 8 documents.
The only one that wasn't included was the Siebel document, but I had sent that in advance of that. I think it was Monday or Tuesday that I had sent that out to the board. And it was also linked in the agenda. So these documents did go out more than 24 hours, business hours prior to the meeting.
Okay.
And we're doing our best. As soon as we get the documents, we're certainly sharing them to send out to the board.
Okay. I'll check again. It may have gone to something else, but I didn't see them. So thank you.
And we're also like wrapping up the legislative session, so a lot of people were very impacted by that, which didn't wrap up until Wednesday, I believe.
Wednesday.
Yeah, at midnight. So,
I think administrators, my only observation would be no criticism of the staff.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff. But it also means that those of us in the other parts of our job that have to deal with the legislature have also been under.
yes, 100%, yeah, 100%, yeah. So everyone's had a lot on their plate at least the last couple of weeks, but we did get them out a minimum of 24 business hours before the meeting today.
Thank you.
So, no problem. So in terms of this, is there any questions on 13B1?
My only thought is what I've said previously with the expansion of the grade bands. Pre-K to 6th grade. If people are transferred into a grade that they have never taught and aren't then going back to school to get certified for upper elementary or middle school, how prepared will people be moving into those roles? That is my only thought. I mean, I'm a pre-K special ed teacher under the 113 of the pre-K 3rd grade. If somebody gets moved in my position to like 5th or 6th grade, I probably would not do very well.
I think that's why they also to retain those middle school endorsements as
Yes.
is, so that way, you hold those and just even those that maybe within those ranges. Right?
113 is not extended to grade 6.
No, it's not to grade 3, right?
Yeah, the 113, the integrated, the only ones that are changed are elementary, so.
So
elementary,
is the
which now 1
305
to 6 is gonna be pre-K to 6, or if you had K to 6, it's now pre-K to 6. If it wasn't an elementary, if it's integrated endorsements, do not get extended. The one.
So the 305
Affected.
So the 305 will now be pre-K 6.
305 will be pre-K 6. 013 will be pre-K 6. 002, like older one.
And so will ed programs include preschool aged instruction
That was
into
part
their
of the
program?
legislation is they need to align it.
Great.
And then for people coming out of state, most other states do have K6 or pre-K 6. And so it's allowing somebody who came in and did a pre-K 6 program. Now we say, sorry, you can't teach below grade 1, and it'll let them.
Good, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or questions?
Just want to echo Tony's concern. There's pre-K where it's added.
Zone beast.
I know. Yes,
It is.
and then 13B2. Are there any questions or discussion on that? Begins on page 3, I believe.
Want us to be cautious of anything that has no requirement, making additional work.
Yes. So I think, so Siebel did a really detailed job of putting this together for us and hearing the different perspectives. And then also providing like some examples of other ways that they were done. We can certainly vote, like we did in the last session, put forth the report minus the suggestions, because we haven't vetted those suggestions yet, right? So in terms of like a portfolio, Wisconsin's professional development that they have in there, in New Hampshire's portfolio system, we can certainly state that we are not endorsing those at this time because it would require us to vet that. Around that, I think that people set in to kind of show us ways that they have been done so that we can start making some collaborative decisions or ideas to go down those routes. But we can certainly submit them.
Because I think that section was like just meeting the requirement of explore alternative pathways for educators to receive cross endorsement. And I think what happened is the introduction to that section is on page 3. And the introduction just says, well, this is the overview of the pathways, but it's not an endorsement or us saying that we will be pursuing the pathway. So maybe if that just gets made clear as like a closing statement at the end of section 4 to say, this was the overview of that Pearl was reviewing of alternative pathways for cross endorsement. The board is not putting those forward as suggestions for our state at this time.
For that section. To 13B, which is really the end, page 6. That's a very short. Are there any questions on that part? Okay, I would cater a motion to move the report forward with the addition that Kristen just stated at the end of possibly each section. I would say, to satisfactory provide our obligation for the statutory obligation that we have here. Ready to have a second? Second. All right. Is there any discussion on moving this forward with the added note for each section? Right. Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand now. Man was raising her hand in person there. So I think it unanimously passed. Thank you. And next we move on to Rebecca. I think we're having a quick meeting afterwards. So like the update's going to be probably we're having a quick meeting afterwards. But go ahead.
Well, I will name the vision setting ad hoc. There are 3 questions that I'm thinking of bringing and hopefully will attract people to want to join. What do we believe all teaching candidates must do to enter the teaching profession in Connecticut to have the most positive impact on birth through 12 students at the start of their teaching career? 2, how will we ensure the licensure pathways designed will be flexible enough to evolve efficiently? And 3, what is an effective and efficient and nimble way to retain effective and diverse educators within our state? So that's the visioning piece, and we'll be meeting this afternoon to get more details on brainstorming group versus ad hoc.
Perfect. Thank you. You can meet. We do have some people that are in that contact list document that was sent out with like some time. So I think we have like five people on that stuff.
And that's been sent to me.
Yeah, because you signed up, you put your name on it.
Okay. I didn't know it was all decided. Okay, great.
But anyone else who might want to add, I think that
Maybe you want to be added now that you heard the questions.
and we would like to keep it to an odd number to assist in having more. Yep. So like just something to kind of keep in mind in terms of the number of folks on there.
There is a meeting?
There's going to be a meeting with the administrator to try to figure out.
Scheduling meeting, and then we'll let everybody know when the schedule has been decided.
And then if we move forward here, actions requiring from the ad hoc committee. So section 12H2 was that kind of report that we were asking about earlier, Chloe.
Yeah, let me, one second, I'm just gonna talk to Natasha.
Okay, that's fine. Section 3 and section 4, we've already discussed today. 13B was discussed today, and then 13A3 is being deferred to the next meeting. So in terms of scheduling, we have a July 1st deadline for us to provide a report for all these sections. So I am proposing that the board change their July meeting to an end of June meeting for us to finalize in about 2 weeks' time, for us to finalize the report, review and finalize the report that we would be submitting to State Board of Ed. That would allow us a week, potentially, depending on the date that we pick, to make any adjustments based on board recommendation. So the date that I'm thinking of is June 23rd, which is the Monday, same time, same place. And that would give our current admins and our new admin time to help craft and put together the final report that we'll put forward. And that would give us about a week before it has to be actually submitted to the State Board of Education. So I would need a motion to move our July meeting to June 23rd.
Second.
Is there any discussion on that? Right, seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hand.
Same time frame.
Same time frame. Yes, thank you.
Oh, 1 second, actually, isn't that the same day that we were invited to the ETS meeting?
Same time.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the ETS
it's at
webinar is
2
at 2
o'clock. I
PM on
wonder
that
if they,
Monday.
yeah, I wonder if they would be able to change that if it's just for us, for
We also
Connecticut.
consider changing it to a different date.
How many of us would be is affected by that? Because I have a designee going to that, so.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I could say, and then they might also
It'll
record
be
it for
recorded.
us.
And it's gonna be
Okay.
recorded, these, yeah.
It's going to be recorded,
Okay,
so
that
we
makes
can
me
review
feel
it
better.
afterwards.
That makes me feel better. Okay,
All right, so as it stands,
problem
then,
resolved.
June 23rd from 1 to 4 o'clock. We had a motion, seconded, discussion. Thank you, Jen. All those in favor, raise your hand now. I think it's passing unanimously. Thank you. So we will move our July, so we won't have a July meeting, a formal board meeting. It'll be moved to that June 23rd. There may be some ad hoc meetings, potentially, depending on what comes out to move forward with. All right, timeline tasks for 2026. Can't believe that we're thinking about this already, but we've got 3 potential tasks, statutory tasks. Would you be able to pull that up for us?
Yeah, let me, well, for the prior question, I don't have a document, so can I request that be?
That can be added to the August meeting, and maybe we can even write up the report, because it's really just them telling us how they do it. It's not like that, like we're changing the process. So then we can just kind of like vote it as part of the package. So bring that to the June 23rd meeting.
Quick question, is our August meeting going to be August 11th? That is the second Monday.
That's what
it currently is based on our bylaws, the second Monday of each month. Yeah. Okay. If there's a change that we want to consider, we can certainly bring that up at the end, at our next meeting in June. To just
got a new planner, so.
Okay.
Gotta put in August.
But if there's any concerns about the August meeting, please let us know, you know, and you can consider that as part of our June conversation, that in the 2 weeks time. So, Our deadlines for 2026.
Sorry, I'm trying to get it up.
One of our deadlines is a report to the State Board of Education. So I do know that's one of the deadlines. And then there's 2 additional ones. I do think that overall our ad hocs have worked well in terms of like being able to move the work forward because they're able to work, meet more frequently and more flexibly based on their schedules. And I think we might, consider that at our August meeting and establishing a couple of ad hocs and we might want to be interested, but I'd like to kind of just go over what those are. And then we will have public participation. And we have a lot done today.
Sorry, Jen, do you remember what you named that document? I mean,
So one day I didn't bring my computer with me. I don't remember because there might be a link at the top of the agenda. This one?
Did I understand correctly that we're not having one in July? We moved it up to June? Or we're still gonna
Yes.
have one in July? Okay,
We're not going to have one in July. In lieu of the one in July, we moved it to the end of June.
gotcha, okay.
And our approval for the report that's being.
Yes, okay. I'm gonna take that off my calendar, okay.
sorry, I'm not. I think.
It might even be in the report that STE Legal gave us at the beginning, because it broke down the.
Oh, like the statutory requirement.
The statutory requirement.
So it's not linked, but it is just at the top of the agenda.
That's the current ones. We're talking about the next ones that we have. Yeah, 2026 ones. Well, who's doing that thing over there? Just want to thank everybody so far. I mean, starting in November, we've gotten a lot done. We really have all of our deadlines. Everybody's working really flexibly and providing really good discussion and ideas to the table in this work. So I just wanted to say as chair, and I'm sure our vice chair would echo the same, that we really appreciate the work that we're all doing here voluntarily on your own time. So thank you very much.
Oh, that's nice. Mine's an
Is that
academic.
visible
year
for
one, so
everyone?
we have to go. Yes.
So. Both A, cross enforcement, 12B. Program review, program approval, section 14. So it's 4 and 5 and 6 on this, correct? So our next deadlines are data review and proposal development for strengthening existing systems. What? Stakeholders STE. Evaluate whether changes necessary. So we'll be reviewing those two by the July 1st deadline. So we have a full year. And then the other one that will be pressing while we're doing that work is just the January 1st. That we will providing in a report to the education committee. And give people an idea. I'll send out the other form as well. And in August, we'll start establishing those ad hocs in that can kind of best go down that road. Right.
That's the question about the guidelines that we thought we were going to be July 1st, but didn't get codified in the statute.
Sure.
Is there anything that would stop us from, we don't have to necessarily hit July 1st, but we don't want to lose them and codifying orientation skills and then potentially this, when we discuss the waiver, starting a document that's ready, like we don't.
Yeah, I think that that's going to be kind of the continuing work. So we have those statutory guidelines and we have met like the strategic goals of the statutory work that we have now, but there's additional work, like even the reading interventionist trying to figure out what's the make recommendations for pre-K to, sixth grade or what have you. So there's going to be additional work for guidance that we should do or regulations. We'll be working with the new administrator on that, so we'll have kind of a better handle on what that will look like. I'm going to go through all of that work with her for that August meeting, so we partly on. But if you have ideas for things you really want to ensure go in, please let us know. And I'll probably be putting out a thought exchange as well, just to kind of pull in some ideas, get some feedback on what we've done so far and what additional steps we might need to take. So do we have any public participation at this time? No, seeing none online or in person, I will take a motion to adjourn. So many. So lots of seconds, all in favor, say aye. Aye. I think that unanimously goes by and we are just a minute over, so excellent time, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Your work.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
When did you say?